KirTop here, and these are 100 unexplained archaeological finds from around the planet. Pyramids inside a person. A man was brought to the hospital in Turkey with a suspected infection, but on the ultrasound, doctors saw something that no one expected. There were 6 huge stones in his bladder, perfectly shaped. One was a cube 7 by 7 by 7 centimeters. The rest were pyramids. The total weight was more than 2 kilograms. All of this was inside, and the patient did not feel any pain. It was later discovered that he had undergone an operation as a child, after which his bladder was enlarged. The stones formed slowly over the years, and they took on an almost perfect geometric shape. This is one of the strangest urological cases in history. Everything was removed surgically, but the cube remained in the archive. Ritual table in Tavaepe. In Azerbaijan, a team of Italian and Azerbaijani archaeologists discovered a 3,500-year-old ritual table in the ancient settlement of Tavaepe. This place is located near the borders of Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. During the excavations, a round-shaped adobe building was found. The structure includes a kitchen area and a ritual table. Between 1500 and 750 BC, late Bronze Age and early Iron Age, nomadic peoples probably used Tavaepe as a resting place before traveling through the mountains. Archaeologists found a ritual table with 8 recesses and many ceramic containers, bowls, vessels made of black-fired ceramics, and long flat stones for mixing food. In the corner of the kitchen, there is a thick layer of ash and clay tokens with fingerprints which could serve as food coupons. The entrance originally had wooden columns, and a thatched roof covered the entire complex, which was about 15 meters in diameter. Animal bones and discarded pottery were found outside. The human figurines placed in the sacrificial pits and the fact that the structure was sealed along with all the utensils indicate its ceremonial nature. A box with relics of Polish monarchs. This elegant box with the inscription Izabela Czartoryska is not just an antique but a symbol of Polish history. In 1800, Princess Izabela Czartoryska collected a unique collection of relics related to Polish kings and great historical events in it. In total, the box contained 73 items, from personal belongings of monarchs to fragments of weapons and clothing symbolizing the national heritage and the spirit of resistance. Izabela considered it her mission to preserve Polish identity during the difficult times of partitions. Her box became part of the first museum in Poland, the Temple of Sibyl, created in Puławy, where she invited guests to remind them of the glory of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Unfortunately, like many national treasures, the box did not escape a tragic fate. In 1939, during the Nazi invasion of Poland, it was looted, and some relics are still considered lost. Rare artifacts from the Titanic. An alligator skin handbag and tiny perfume bottles that still exude a powerful scent are just a few of the precious artifacts found during the excavation of the sunken Titanic. The location of the warehouse containing these relics is a closely guarded secret, only known to be located in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. The shelves are filled with thousands of items, from an overturned bathtub and portholes to tiny buttons and glassware. Thomasina Ray, director of collections at RMS Titanic Inc., showed off an alligator skin handbag belonging to Marion Meanwell, a third-class passenger. Marion was a 63-year-old milliner who was traveling to the United States to visit her daughter. Her bag contained important documents and photographs. Her tragic fate was that she had originally booked a ticket for another ship, but ended up on the Titanic and was one of the 1,500 who died. Other artifacts include perfume bottles belonging to Adolf Saalfeld, a perfumer and first-class passenger who survived the disaster. The scent of the perfume can still be smelled today, despite the fact that it has been lying on the ocean floor for decades. The collection also includes a bottle of champagne with the drink inside, found among the many kitchen utensils on the ocean floor. The Titanic was a luxury liner, and there was a huge amount of champagne on board for the first-class passengers who enjoyed the highest level of comfort. The tableware on board reflected the class divisions: rough white ceramics for third class, exquisite gold-rimmed plates for first-class passengers. These objects helped to recreate the atmosphere of life on board. RMS Titanic Inc., the company that is authorized to retrieve artifacts from the ship, recently announced its desire to retrieve the Marconi radio that transmitted distress signals. Some believe that the sunken ship is a burial site that should be left alone. However, Thomasina Ray notes the importance of preserving the memory of the tragedy through these artifacts. What do you think? Should the ship be left alone, or should an attempt be made to raise it to dry land? Write your opinion in the comments below the video. The disappearance of the 10 tribes of Israel. This is one of the most mysterious and little discussed topics in history. At the end of the 8th century BC, almost the entire ancient Israeli state disappeared. The Assyrians captured the northern kingdom of Israel, and with it 10 of the 12 tribes that made up the people disappeared. In fact, 5/6 of the population. Where did they go? Historical chronicles report that after the conquest, the Assyrians forcibly resettled the Israelites to Mesopotamia, to the areas of today's Iran and Afghanistan. That's where the trail ends. The people disappeared from the historical map. More than 2,000 years have passed, and during this time they have become something of a myth. They were searched for all over the world. In India, in Iran, in the Caucasus region, in Japan, there is even a Makuya movement whose followers are convinced that the Japanese imperial family is of Jewish origin. The very word Mikado, in their opinion, comes from Mi Gadol, great. Some see the Afghan Pashtuns as descendants of the Israelites. Others see them as North American Indians. But none of these versions have been accepted. There is no exact genetic link, no written evidence, no archaeological trace. There is only a legend and a desire to find those who once left and never return. What the largest ship of antiquity looked like. The need for huge warships appeared in mankind long before steam engines and steel hulls. Already thousands of years ago, the fleet was considered the most important instrument of influence and domination. Through it, borders were strengthened, territories were conquered, and key resources were gained. It is believed that the foundation of ancient military shipbuilding was laid by the Diadochi, the successors of Alexander the Great. It was they who first began to build real military giants, such as Polyares and Tessaracanters, comparable in scale to modern battleships. One of the most impressive ships of antiquity was the Egyptian Tessaracanter, built in the 3rd century BC by order of King Ptolemy IV Philopator. It was a real floating fortress 130 meters long and 22 meters high. The ship accommodated about 4,000 rowers, not counting the crew, marines, and supplies. The name Tessaracantera translates as 40 row, according to the number of rows of oars. The exact number of oars is controversial. Researchers cite figures from 300 to 600. According to surviving descriptions, the ship had powerful weapons, a ram, catapults, and battle towers, and outwardly resembled a mobile fortress. Its sides were decorated with wooden carved vines, crocodiles, and other mythical creatures were painted on the stern, and the bow was crowned with a 5-meter figure of Aeolus, the Lord of the Winds. Inside there were halls, statues, even libraries, and according to some sources, stables. All this spoke more about status than about practical military necessity. Tessaracantera was more a symbol of power than an effective ship. Due to its size, it did not have full maneuverability and could not even go to sea on its own. It was towed by rowboats. Nevertheless, its very existence was an engineering breakthrough. The Egyptian Tessaracantera is not just an archaic ship, but a shining example of how ancient technology could reach incredible scales. Yes, it did not become a battle legend, but it certainly went down in history as one of the most ambitious naval projects of its time. TRex bag. British scientists, together with designers, have created a material that imitates the skin of a Tyrannosaurus rex. This is not just a reptile texture. They tried to recreate the exact structure that dinosaurs could have had 66 million years ago. The basis was fossilized imprints of scales preserved on fossil tracks. They studied the micro-relief, density, and arrangement of cells. Then they superimposed the data on a 3D model, added a reconstructed coloring, and prepared samples of the material. All this was done as part of an exhibition dedicated to extinct species, but the topic quickly went beyond the scientific. One of the British brands presented a concept, a bag made of artificial T-Rex skin. Of course, it was not on sale, but the idea itself caused a resonance. This is, in fact, an attempt not just to show a dinosaur, but to make it tangible, to turn an extinct predator into a thing that you can hold in your hands. No one is going to sew from real remains, but the idea itself is unexpected. Mysterious substance in a coffin. Archaeologists in northwestern China's Xinjiang region have made a shocking discovery. In an ancient coffin that was about 3,600 years old and contained mummies from the Bronze Age, a mysterious substance was found on the neck of one of the women. Today, scientists believe it is the oldest cheese in the world. The researchers isolated DNA from the substance and found that it was kefir cheese made from cow and goat milk. This discovery is important for understanding the origins of kefir and the evolution of probiotic bacteria. Xiao Mei Fu, from the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and colleagues analyzed the bacteria, yeast, and proteins in the sample, which allowed them to identify the ancient cheese. The research suggests that kefir cheese was important to people at the time. It may have been placed in the grave as part of burial customs or as food for the afterlife. Interestingly, two types of cheese were found in the coffin, one made from goat's milk and one from cow's milk. Genetic studies have shown that the microorganisms in the cheese are similar to modern kefir strains found in East Asia and Tibet. This raises questions about the geographic origins of kefir. Previously, kefir was thought to have originated in the Caucasus, but new today points to a possible second source in Xinjiang. These results suggest that kefir has spread around the world via multiple routes, and its history is closely tied to the evolution of human culture. Ancient stone circles in Saudi Arabia. Archaeologists in Saudi Arabia have unearthed 8 ancient stone circles that served as habitations for people more than 7,000 years ago. Some 345 such structures have been identified through aerial photography in the Karat Uwairid lava field near the city of Alula in northwestern Saudi Arabia. The stone circles range from 4 to 8 meters in diameter and include at least one standing stone in the center. During excavations, archaeologists discovered many stone tools made of basalt. Almost 225 kilograms of stone tools or their fragments were recovered from only 5 circles. Bones of sheep, goats, and cows were also found. The finds included a variety of seashells from the Red Sea, located about 120 kilometers to the west. The round shape of houses was a global phenomenon in early architecture, and rectangular houses appeared later in the Neolithic period. The architecture of standing stone circles in Saudi Arabia is similar to structures found in Jordan, dating back approximately 500 years. The people who built these structures also raised sheep, goats, and cattle. An observatory without a telescope. Before the invention of the telescope, astronomers used primitive instruments to observe the sky. One of the most prominent astronomers was Tycho Brahe, a Danish scientist who achieved astonishingly accurate results using instruments such as the astrolabe and armillary sphere. His data on the positions of planets and stars were far more accurate than any previous observations. Tycho Brahe compiled the first star catalog, including more than 1,000 stars, which became an important reference for subsequent scientists. In 1572, he observed a supernova, which overturned Aristotle's idea of the immutability of celestial objects. His collaboration with Johannes Kepler led to the formulation of the 3 laws of planetary motion, which became the basis for the work of Isaac Newton. In 1576, King Frederick II of Denmark gave Tycho the island of Hven, where he built the Uraniborg Observatory. It was the first observatory specifically built for astronomical observations. The observatory included living quarters, astronomical instruments, and an alchemical laboratory. Brahe's main motto engraved in the library was, "What a man is more important than what he is thought to be." After Frederick II's death, Tycho lost support and was forced to leave Vienna in 1597. After his death, the observatory was destroyed by order of the new king, Christian IV. Today, Uraniborg and neighboring Stjärneborg have been partially restored and included in a museum dedicated to the life and legacy of Tycho Brahe. Anatomical Machines by Raimondo di Sangro. In Naples, in the basement of the San Severo Chapel, there are 2 exhibits that still excite the imagination of visitors and scientists. These are the so-called anatomical machines, 2 skeletons, male and female, around which the circulatory system is carefully reproduced. Arteries, veins, and capillaries intertwine the bones, passing through the head, chest, and limbs. For centuries, there were legends that the vessels were real and the skeletons were the remains of people sacrificed for the sake of science. Allegedly, the anatomist Giuseppe Salerno, on the instructions of Prince Raimondo di Sangro, during his lifetime injected his servants with a special substance that caused the blood to petrify and keep the vessels in perfect condition. In fact, everything is a little more prosaic. The vessels are made of wax, wire, and silk, but with such precision that even modern experts do not exclude that experiments were conducted on living people before the creation of the machines. Prince Raimondo was an extraordinary person. An alchemist, inventor, and experimenter, he created fireworks that resembled architectural landscapes, counterfeited jewelry, and allegedly invented an eternal flame that burned for 3 months. At one time, next to the female skeleton, there was a third one, the skeleton of a fetus connected to the placenta. But in the 1990s, it was stolen. Nevertheless, the anatomical machines still amaze and frighten, and this apparently was their purpose. States that don't exist. Some countries have no army, no recognition, no clear borders, but they have a flag, they have an anthem, and there are people who call it their homeland. So-called self-proclaimed states are springing up all over the world, without coordination, without negotiations, without consent. Someone just declares independence one day and considers it a fact. In 1977, an American named Kevin Baugh declared that his plot of land in Nevada was now the Republic of Molossia. He issued his own passports, made a coat of arms, made up laws, and declared himself president. No country recognized this, but Molossia still exists. It has a website, a flag, and even prints its own currency. A similar story is with northern Sedland. This country is located on a former offshore platform in the North Sea. It was occupied, a flag was raised, and declared a state. Legally, it is just a metal structure, but it has a prince and a website. Other examples sound even stranger. Somewhere a republic of one apartment is proclaimed. Somewhere a micro-empire of 2 tents in the desert. Somewhere a state founded by children that unexpectedly lasted for several years. Some of these projects are a joke. Some are a serious attempt to make a statement in a world where not everyone gets a say. And almost always it is a protest against borders, against stories, against other people's decisions. Giant hearse. Archaeologists have discovered a unique funeral cart in a double burial near the city of Dongfeng in northern China. The found fragments of the hearse, which is about 7 meters long and more than 2 meters wide, date back to the Liao dynasty. Although part of the cart has collapsed, many of the iron elements decorated with gilding have survived in excellent condition. In the second tomb, archaeologists found more than 30 artifacts, including silver and copper jewelry, as well as gilded bells. These finds will help to study the unique burial rites of the Khitan people, the creators of the Liao state. Interestingly, some scientists believe that the Russian name for China comes from the Khitan people. Unusual remains of ancient monkeys. In one of the caves on the island of Hispaniola in the Caribbean Sea, fossilized remains of ancient primates were found, which probably became the prey of a large predatory owl. The discovery was reported in the Journal of Human Evolution. Excavations were carried out in a flooded cave in the Dominican Republic, where archaeologists discovered 7 skulls, 5 lower jaws, and many other skeletal fragments. Scientists came to the conclusion that these remains belonged to the species Antilothrax bernensis, which became extinct about 10,000 years ago. According to the study, the primates that lived on Hispaniola weighed up to 2 kilograms and probably lived in small families, eating fruit. Experts suggest that the remains ended up at the bottom of the cave after an attack by a predatory bird. Professor Siobhan Cook notes that marks on the bones indicate that these primates fell victim to a large owl. The skulls and jaws show damage typical of birds of prey. Engineering miracle in Egypt. Ancient Egypt continues to amaze modern researchers again. This time, an amazing tunnel was discovered under a temple in the ancient city of Taposiris Magna, which experts call a geometric miracle. The tunnel was found at a depth of 13 meters. Its length is 1305 meters and its height is about 2 meters. It is carved into sandstone and resembles the famous Eupalinos tunnel on the Greek island of Samos, which is considered an engineering miracle. The exact purpose of the tunnel is still unknown, but some of its parts are flooded with water. Archaeologist Martinez, who has been searching for the lost tomb of Cleopatra VII since 2004, believes that the tunnel may lead to important discoveries. Osiris Magna was founded around 280 BC by Ptolemy II, one of Cleopatra's ancestors. Archaeologists believe the temple was dedicated to Osiris and Isis, deities with whom Cleopatra was closely associated. The team also plans to explore the Mediterranean Sea, as a series of earthquakes between 320 and 1303 caused part of the temple to collapse into the water. In my previous videos, I described how tunnels were discovered connecting Lake Mariu to the Mediterranean. 2,500-year-old helmet in Dacian treasures. This golden helmet is one of the most famous artifacts of the Dacian culture, dating back to around 450 BC. Known as the Kotofinesti helmet, it is considered not only a work of ancient jewelry but also a symbol of power and ritual strength. Decorated with eyes, snakes, and mythological scenes, it may have belonged to a priest or chieftain who played a sacred role in Dacian society. The helmet seems to look at enemies, instilling fear and protecting the owner. On January 25, 2025, this helmet became the victim of a daring robbery. Several unique exhibits were stolen from the Drenthe Museum in Assen, Netherlands, where the exhibition Dacia, Land of Gold and Silver, was taking place. Among them were this helmet and 3 royal Dacian bracelets. All the items came from the National History Museum of Romania. The loss of these artifacts was a real blow to the cultural heritage. Full scan of the Titanic. For the first time in history, a full digital 3D scan of the Titanic has been made. Hundreds of thousands of images were collected into a model that allows us to examine every centimeter of the sunken liner. The scan showed many details that were previously inaccessible: destroyed decks, personal belongings, individual structural elements. The experts studied the stern, portholes, and the hull break especially carefully. For example, they discovered that one of the portholes exactly matched the eyewitness accounts of the moment of the collision with the iceberg. The model also confirmed something important: the engineering compartment continued to supply electricity until the very end. This allowed the lighting to be maintained longer and gave passengers more time to evacuate. This is exactly what matches the stories about how the light on the ship burned until the very end. The scan provides more than just a picture. It is a tool with which the Titanic can be studied as if it were not at the bottom, but standing on dry land. And there is something particularly strange about this, to look at what has perished with such clarity. Ancient Slavic cemetery in Germany. Archaeologists from Saxony-Anhalt, Germany have made an important discovery, having discovered a medieval Slavic settlement and cemetery near Wetten-Lobezun. The finds were made in preparation for the construction of the underground SuedoSlink power line. The excavations revealed a 1.2-acre settlement dating back to the migration period and the early Middle Ages, 5 to 10 the centuries AD. The settlement went through 2 stages. In the early stage, it was fortified with a 4-meter-wide moat, and later individual farmsteads with 0. 5-meter-wide moats appeared. Among the artifacts found were a pearl and a bronze bracelet. An important part of the settlement was the crafts quarter, where bog iron ore was mined and textiles were made. 2 wells were also discovered, providing the settlement with water. A cemetery with about 60 graves from the 10th to 11th centuries, arranged in 2 lines, was excavated near the settlement. Most of the burials were made according to Christian traditions, with the bodies facing east. Among the finds, a family grave and the burial of a child with hydrocephalus stand out, which testifies to the care of the community. New Mayan ruins. Archaeologists are finding more and more Mayan ruins thanks to new technologies and satellites that help to detect structures hidden under dense forests. As Texas Tech University archaeology professor Brett Houck told a NASA conference, scientists have discovered more Mayan sites in the last 10 years than in the previous 150 years. The main tool that helps in this is LiDAR, laser scanning technology. LiDAR allows you to see through dense forest vegetation and reveal structures that were previously hidden. With the help of this technology, archaeologists are finding more and more ruins in what is now Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize. One such project is a study in northeastern Belize, where a team of scientists is studying an area of 650 square kilometers. In just a few days, scientists have discovered 28 new large sites. The technologies of the past used by the Maya to manage water and farm may still be useful today. Tim Murtha of the University of North Carolina at Charlotte noted that the Maya adapted to changing climate conditions by creating systems of terraces and reservoirs to combat droughts. These ancient techniques may hold important lessons for today's changing climate. Priestess from Peru. Archaeologists in Peru have found a burial of a woman that is over 1,000 years old. She was lying in a grave surrounded by important objects, vessels, jewelry, and fragments of fabric. These things indicate her high status. Most likely she was a priestess. The burial was arranged with attention to detail. Her body was carefully laid out, and around her were objects associated with rituals or worship. They helped to preserve her memory and status, even after death. This is not just a grave, it is a sign of respect and reverence. What is interesting is that despite its age, this find is quite well preserved. Fabric, jewelry, even bones, everything is in good condition. Sand and dryness help to preserve details that usually disappear after centuries. The disappearance of the ancient civilization. 900 years ago, one of the world's largest civilizations, Cahokia, disappeared. New research has challenged the old theory that drought and crop failure were the cause. The Cahokia Mounds, located near modern-day St. Louis, were a thriving settlement with a population of about 5,000 people. By 1400, the site was deserted, and the reasons for the mass exodus remain a mystery to archaeologists. Archaeologists analyzed the soil of Cahokia, studying the carbon isotopes left behind by plants that grew during the mass exodus. The results showed that the ratio of carbon-12 to carbon-13 remained stable. This indicates that there were no significant changes in the local vegetation and does not support the version of crop failure. It is known that the inhabitants of Cahokia were inventive and may have had the skills to irrigate and store crops. They also had a varied diet, including fish, birds, deer, fruits, and nuts, which would have ensured their survival even if some food sources were lost. So why did they abandon Cahokia? Archaeologists suspect it was a long process caused by external factors. To better understand why, scientists plan to create a database of paleobotanical evidence and conduct experiments with growing ancient crops in controlled conditions. Mysterious remains in a lead coffin. After the 2019 Notre Dame Cathedral fire, archaeologists discovered 100 unknown burials beneath the cathedral during restoration work, including a mysterious lead coffin. French researchers believe that the remains may be those of the famous French Renaissance poet Joachim du Bellay, who died in 1560. The remains, found in 2022, were nicknamed the Horseman due to the structure of the bones, which indicate that the man had been riding a horse from an early age. Du Bellay, whose tomb was thought to be lost, was believed to have been buried in the cathedral next to his uncle. However, attempts to find him in 1758 were unsuccessful. Researchers from the National Institute for Preventive Archaeological Research have confirmed that the mysterious horseman may be Du Bellay. The coffin, which was different from the others in its lead structure, attracted the attention of scientists. Research showed that the man died at the age of about 30 from tuberculous meningitis, which was not typical for most of the elderly men buried in the cathedral. Scientists from the University of Toulouse conducted additional tests and found that the man buried in the cathedral suffered from the same diseases that Du Bellay described in his poems. Despite this, the slight discrepancy in the geographical origin of the horseman and the poet remains a mystery. Despite minor doubts, everything points to the fact that the remains belong to Du Bellay. Mystical riddles of ancient Egypt. Since ancient times, the heavens have inspired the Egyptians to create majestic monuments. The astronomical knowledge underlying the construction of the pyramids is amazing in its accuracy and depth. The pyramids of Giza, aligned with amazing precision in accordance with the stars of Orion's belt, testify to the extraordinary knowledge of the ancients in the field of cosmology. Such accuracy gives rise to speculation about possible extraterrestrial influence or even assistance in construction. Various texts, including the pyramid texts, hint at a deep connection between the divine and the cosmic, suggesting that knowledge may have been passed down to humans from more advanced civilizations. The complexity and sophistication of ancient Egyptian architectural and engineering achievements, such as the ventilation systems inside the pyramids and the acoustics in the temples, raises admiration and many questions. How were the ancient Egyptians able to so precisely craft and set multi-ton stone blocks without any visible modern technology? Some argue that such knowledge could have been gained from the gods who, according to myth, visited Earth sharing their technology. These speculations are fueled by discoveries of unusually accurate star charts, surgical instruments, and other items indicating a high level of scientific and technological development. The discovery of artifacts with images resembling modern aircraft and complex mechanisms adds to the mystery of Egyptian history. For example, reliefs depicting objects resembling helicopters and submarines are controversial among scientists. Perhaps the ancient Egyptians were inspired by visions of the future or used artifacts left behind by more advanced civilizations as prototypes to create their own technologies. There is a theory that the ancient Egyptians had knowledge far ahead of their time, including the secrets of eternal life, methods of treating diseases that were incurable at that time, and ways to generate energy. This knowledge may have been lost over the centuries, leaving behind only hints and references in religious texts and myths. The discovery of medical instruments, astronomical knowledge, and chemical compounds used in mummification supports the idea that the ancient Egyptians had advanced knowledge. Imagine for a moment that an artifact was found in the depths of the Great Pyramid, indicating contact with an ancient civilization with technologies far superior to our own. The discovery of such a crystal, perhaps emitting an unknown type of energy, could revolutionize our understanding of history, science, and the very nature of reality. This hypothetical scenario embodies humanity's eternal quest beyond the known to discover lost knowledge that could change the world. Tiara of Syaphernes. For many years, the Louvre proudly displayed a gold tiara that allegedly belonged to the Scythian king Syaphernes. The inscription on the artifact indicated that it was a gift to the king from the inhabitants of ancient Greek Olbia, and this looked quite credible. However, behind the shiny exterior lurked one of the most notorious hoaxes in the history of archaeology. The story began in 1894 in Odessa, when two antique dealers, the Catman brothers, convinced the talented jeweler Israel Rukamovsky to make a tiara in the ancient Greek style for his archaeologist friend. Rukamovsky, not knowing ancient mythology, relied on illustrations from books provided to him. The resulting masterpiece, weighing half a kilogram, looked like a genuine artifact. Scenes from the Iliad, carefully engraved figures, and a solemn inscription glorifying the king. The Catmans sold the piece to the Louvre at a profit, where they paid 200,000 francs for it. The deal was concluded, as they later joked, on April 1, 1896. However, some archaeologists, in particular Adolf Furtwängler, soon began to doubt the authenticity of the artifact. The Louvre insisted on the opposite, attributing the criticism to envy and political motives. The truth was revealed only in 1903, when Rukamovsky learned that his creation had become a museum relic. He came to Paris, personally reproduced a fragment of the tiara, and proved that it was a modern fake. The Louvre had no choice but to admit the mistake. Later, the tiara was included in the Salon of Counterfeits, and Rukamovsky himself became famous. His works became in demand, and the curiosity with the tiara became an important lesson for museums around the world. The quest for the silver spear. The Spear of Longinus, also known as the Spear of Destiny, is one of the most famous and mystical artifacts in history. According to Christian legend, this is the spear with which the Roman legionary Longinus pierced the side of the crucified Jesus Christ. Many legends claim that this artifact has great magical powers and that its owner can rule the world and gain unlimited power. The Nazi leadership, especially Adolf Hitler, were confident in the power of the Spear of Destiny. Hitler first saw it in his youth in a Vienna museum and was so impressed that he later called this moment a turning point in his life. Many great rulers of the past, such as Charlemagne and Napoleon, were believed to have owned this spear, which supposedly helped them achieve their great achievements. Hitler was confident that if he took possession of the Spear of Longinus, it would ensure him not only victory in war, but also domination of the world. When the Nazis came to power, the search for the Spear of Destiny became part of their program to collect ancient artifacts that could strengthen their influence and power. Secret research conducted within the Ahnenerbe organization was aimed at finding both Christian relics and other ancient objects with magical or religious powers. The Spear of Longinus was considered the key to the success of the entire Nazi project. In 1938, after the Anschluss of Austria, Hitler ordered the immediate transfer of the Spear of Destiny from the museum in Vienna to Nuremberg, where it was placed in a special room for study and storage. During the following years of the war, the Nazis continued to search for the original spear, fearing that the spear found in Vienna might be a copy and not the real thing. The Ahnenerbe went all over Europe looking for traces of other relics associated with the spear. It was believed that the spear might have been lost or hidden during the Crusades, and the Nazis actively studied ancient maps and texts to find at least some traces. Secret missions were sent to the most remote corners of Europe and the Middle East, trying to find clues that could lead to the real spear. The fate of the Spear of Longinus remains one of the mysteries of World War II. After the capture of Nuremberg in 1945, the artifact was found in the city's treasury and handed over to American troops. However, there is still debate about whether this spear is genuine or one of the many replicas created in the Middle Ages. Some researchers believe that the true Spear of Destiny has never been found and is still in one of the secret places, waiting for its new owner. The Untold Riches of the Incas. The treasure of Langanides is one of the most fascinating legends of the lost riches of South America. According to legend, the Inca treasures, gold, silver, statues, and jewels, were hidden by the military leader Rumiñahui in the Langanides Mountains in the east of modern-day Ecuador. This happened after the Spanish executed the Inca ruler Atahualpa in 1533, despite the fact that the Inca people had already begun to collect a ransom for him. Rumiñahui, upon learning of Atahualpa's death, ordered all the collected riches to be hidden so that they would not fall into the hands of the invaders. The Spanish captured him and subjected him to cruel torture, but he never revealed the secret of the treasure's location. Since then, the treasure of Langanides has been the subject of many expeditions and searches, but none have been successful. The dense jungles, impassable mountain paths, and fogs of this region still hold the secret of the Inca gold. The legend lives on, inspiring treasure hunters from all over the world to search for the most mysterious treasure of South America. Arabian jewels in Russia. A record-breaking hoard of Arabian silver jewelry and coins dating back to the late 10th century has been discovered in Veliki Novgorod. The find was made on Vozdvizhinskaya Street during excavations at a construction site. This hoard, dubbed Vozdvizhinsky, was the third such discovery in the city. The hoard contained 1,800 whole and fragmented silver coins, as well as more than 80 silver jewelry pieces, weighing a total of about 3 kilograms. Among the jewelry pieces were some of the oldest silver crosses in Rus, which were previously little known. According to scientists, this is one of the largest archaeological discoveries in the history of Veliki Novgorod. The unusual shape of the asteroid UMUMUA. In 2017, astronomers recorded a mysterious object flying through the solar system. Named UMUMUA, which means messenger from afar in Hawaiian, it became the first known interstellar asteroid. But the most surprising thing is its shape. At 230 meters long and only 35 meters wide, it turned out to be abnormally elongated, which is not typical for asteroids. Chinese astronomers have suggested that such objects are formed as a result of tidal disruption when a celestial body comes too close to a massive planet or star and disintegrates. In their calculations, the best creator of such asteroids is a system with a red dwarf and a gas giant located close to the star. Some scientists believe that UMUMUA could be a fragment of a planet or planetesimal, the building material of young worlds. However, even under the best conditions, such objects are formed extremely rarely, so its appearance is a real interstellar rarity, perhaps the only one in our entire history of observations. Man of the Hole. In Brazil, they simply called him the Man of the Hole, the last survivor of a destroyed tribe. He lived 26 years in complete solitude, avoiding contact and never speaking to strangers. He dug deep traps in the ground, either for hunting or as shelter, hence the nickname. His family was killed by farmers back in the 90s. After that, he disappeared. He went into the forests and never came out. The state guarded his territory, 8,000 hectares under protection. They threw him tools, food, but he rejected almost everything. Once he even shot an arrow at an employee who came too close. In 2022, he was found dead in a hammock. A feather ornament was lying nearby. There were no signs of violence. Apparently, he knew that he was dying, and he passed away calmly. He left no words, no history, only traces, but his silence is also a voice, a very loud one. Where did the Scythians disappear to? The Scythians are one of those peoples that everyone has heard of but knows almost nothing about. The Greeks described them as wild horsemen from the north, living without cities but mastering the art of war. Herodotus devoted an entire part of his works to them. And then, silence. At some point, the Scythians simply disappear from history. At the height of their power, they controlled vast territories, from the Danube to the Altai. They traded with the Greeks, fought with the Persians, fought with Alexander the Great, and later with the Sarmatians and Huns. Their culture was bright and unique: burial mounds, gold jewelry, animal style and art, a special attitude to death. And suddenly, an abrupt end. No chronicles, no clear evidence of what happened to them. Historians suggest that the Scythians dissolved into other peoples. Some say into the Sarmatians. Some people believe that the descendants of the Scythians are the Ossetians, Chechens, and Ingush. But all of this is just a hypothesis. There is no direct evidence. What particularly touches me is their burial mounds. You stand on a hill in the steppe, and under your feet, thousands of years ago, someone buried a leader, with weapons, with gold, with a horse. Everything is neatly laid out, as if the person had not died, but had simply set off on a long journey. And then you look at it and understand. It is not just an army or people that has disappeared. A whole view of the world has disappeared. Powerful, swift, nomadic, with its own logic and its own truth. Pink Treasure Keeper's Sarcophagus. Dream find. That's what archaeologists called the sarcophagus, which they managed to find near Cairo. As you know, very important people of ancient Egypt were kept in sarcophaguses. It seems to me that the ancient Egyptians buried a high-ranking nobleman 3,300 years ago. Clearly not so that we can now get him out of the tomb and study him with the help of modern equipment. But how else can we study the history of our ancestors if the papyruses contain far from all the information about the life of the pharaohs? Scientists have already found out that the pink sarcophagus belonged to Tavaepe, who served as head of the treasury under Ramses the Great. On all sides, the sarcophagus is decorated with hieroglyphs and various titles. It lay at a depth of 10 meters for more than 3,000 years and now looks like it did on the first day. Historians have little data on who ruled Egypt after Tutankhamun. Therefore, every find is important. The pink sarcophagus indicates that the person buried in it was close to the king and played a very important role in the state administration of that time. If it's easier to explain to you in modern language, then Tavaepe in the modern world would be the Minister of Finance. To get to the tomb, archaeologists had to dig up and take out tons of sand. And this was only the first level of the tomb, located next to the pyramid of King Unas. Under the sand, they found masonry, and in order to further dive to the second level of the tomb, the masonry had to be strengthened. Through a small hole in the floor, they descended to the second level of the tomb, where the sarcophagus was located. Archaeologists descended in a metal basket, lowering and raising themselves on their own. It would seem that with such technologies in the 21st century, excavations have to be carried out in the same way as 200 years ago. The condition of the sarcophagus was good, but the broken cover indicated the presence of marauders here. Usually different people were reburied in sarcophaguses, but in our case, the sarcophagus belonged to its first owner. This is confirmed by the hieroglyphs and titles found on the sarcophagus. Professor Elaguizi's team will now fully examine the sarcophagus to uncover the full life story of Tavaepe. And around the same time, in the Marianas, people lured octopuses. Emerald Goblet. This 17th century emerald goblet is a true treasure, carved from a single piece of emerald weighing 252 carats. Such artifacts are extremely rare because the processing of such a large stone requires incredible skill. The surface of the goblet is decorated with fine inscriptions in Arabic, which indicates its origin in the Islamic world, probably from Persia or India, where the art of stone carving was at the highest level. At that time, emeralds were valued not only for their beauty, but also for their magical properties. They were believed to protect against poisons and give wisdom. Cups made of such stones could only belong to rulers or noblemen and were used on special occasions, emphasizing the status of the owner. Particular attention is drawn to the hexagonal shape and smooth edges that catch the light and make the emerald glow from within. Such items symbolize power and spiritual purity, and today this cup is considered one of the rarest and most valuable artifacts that have preserved the grandeur of past eras. Beer Quarry Cave. This Roman quarry was once a refuge for smugglers and is now home to rare species of bat. The beer stone quarried here was an important building material in Roman times. 2,000 years of quarrying has created a winding system of caves near the village of Beer, which gives the stone its name. The first Romans to arrive in Devon noticed the limestone cliffs at the mouth of the River Exe. They discovered veins of fine-grained limestone and began quarrying it. When the surface supply was exhausted, the Romans dug deeper into the cliffs, quarrying the stone with picks and wooden wedges. The stone was used to build important public buildings. The stone was transported to the river and shipped out by boat. After the Romans left, the quarries were used by the Saxons. Their quarries had sharp, square corners, as opposed to the rounded Roman ones. Beer stone was easy to work but hardened in the air, becoming stronger. It was cut on site and used to build buildings such as Windsor Castle, London Bridge, and Westminster Abbey. The stone was also used in the construction of Christ Church Cathedral in St. Louis, USA. After the Protestant Reformation, Catholics held secret masses in these caves. In the early 19th century, smugglers, including Jack Rattenbury, used the caves to hide contraband from ships. Mining ceased in the early 20th century when a new site was discovered. These caves are now of particular scientific interest due to the rare bats that inhabit them. Who discovered America before Columbus? When we hear discovery of America, we almost automatically think of 1492 and Columbus's ships. But more and more often, arguments are being made that Europeans had been to the New World long before him, especially the Vikings. The protagonist of this alternative history is Bjarni Herjulfsson, a Scandinavian merchant. At the end of the 10th century, he was blown off course by a storm and, according to him, saw a green land to the west. He did not land, but told about it. A few years later, Leif Erikson, the son of Eric the Red, went in search and found Vinland. This is believed to be part of the coast of Canada. In 1960, in L'Anse aux Meadows, Newfoundland, the remains of a Scandinavian settlement were found. Houses, a forge, nails, direct evidence. But official history ignored this data for a long time. Why? Perhaps because it is more convenient when the discovery is associated with one date and one hero, and not with a sailor's mistake in an abandoned village. But the mysteries do not end there. There are theories that even before the Vikings, the American coast was visited by the Phoenicians, Basques, Celts, and Chinese. True, the evidence is extremely controversial. Only the story with the Vikings stands firm. Only it is still perceived as something secondary, like yes, they visited, but there was no use. This place was discovered twice. In the south of Cyprus, archaeologists have discovered the remains of an ancient sanctuary. A small building, stone foundations, traces of cult activity, and it seems to be nothing unusual. Many such places are found. But this time there was one but. This sanctuary had already been found many years ago and forgotten again. Documentation about it was lost. It was not included in the map of active sites. There was no security, no signs, no excavations, and now it has been rediscovered, and they have begun to study it again. Inside, there is an altar, the remains of burnt offerings, fragments of figurines. Everything points to a local cult, probably worship of the goddess of fertility or a local spirit. Nothing grandiose, but it is very precisely and calmly arranged. It is clear that the place was important. Lions guarding the silence. On the Greek island of Delos stands one of the most recognizable ancient compositions, the Terrace of the Lions, a row of marble lions lined up towards the sacred lake where, according to legend, Apollo was born. Originally, there were 16 of them. Only 5 have survived. The rest have been destroyed or moved to museums. There are copies on the terrace itself to preserve the spirit of the place. The lions are not just decoration, they are guards, symbolic protection of the sacred space, and in essence, a demonstration that the divine begins here. This is how the ancient Greeks marked the boundary between the ordinary and the sacred. Today, this is one of the most photographed places on Delos. But if you look a little more closely, you can see the lions are not about strength, but about silence and a boundary. And this boundary has survived 2,500 years. Sunken ship with lead ingots. About 2,000 years ago, a Roman ship sank in the Mediterranean Sea with valuable cargo, including massive lead ingots. The heaviest of them weighs 68 kilograms, which is about 205 Roman pounds, according to the University of Alicante. Markings on the ingot indicate that it belonged to a Roman emperor, possibly Nero. In addition, there were about 3,000 cans of fish sauce on board the ship. This sauce, known as garum, was popular in Roman cuisine and was widely used as a seasoning. The ship was about 32 meters long and was probably en route from Cadiz to Rome when it sank. The ship not only carried valuable metals but also foodstuffs important to the Roman diet. Exploring the shipwreck provides a unique opportunity to study the shipbuilding technologies and trading methods of the ancient Romans. Ancient Roman cellar in Germany. In March 2023, archaeologists in Frankfurt am Main made a truly sensational find. During excavations in the historic district of Hetternheim, researchers came across a uniquely preserved fragment of a Roman house, a wooden staircase leading to a cellar almost 2,000 years old. This seems incredible because wood rarely survives for so long, especially in an urban environment. Hetternheim is a district with a rich history. Once upon a time, the ancient Roman city of Nida, founded during the reign of Emperor Augustus, was located here. Later, in 110 AD, Emperor Trajan made it the capital of the Civitas Taunensium region. The city flourished. The population reached 10,000 people. But already in the 3rd century, due to attacks by Germanic tribes, it began to decline and was finally abandoned. In the 20th century, traces of Nida almost completely disappeared. Old houses were dismantled, basements were destroyed during construction. Therefore, the discovery of a wooden staircase and floor in a Roman basement is a real miracle. The object was in excellent condition, and archaeologists decided to preserve it. Honey in Africa. Honey is humanity's oldest sweetener, and for thousands of years it was the only one. Petroglyphs dating back 8,000 to 4,000 years have been found on various continents, hinting at the importance of bees and their products. Ancient Egyptian reliefs show evidence of beekeeping as early as 2600 BC. However, until recently, there was no direct archaeological evidence of honey collection in sub-Saharan Africa. A study of chemical food residues on pottery shards has changed this idea. Archaeologists from Goethe University, working with chemists from the University of Bristol, have discovered traces of beeswax in 3,500-year-old pottery shards belonging to the Nok culture. This culture, which existed in central Nigeria from 1500 BC to the beginning of the Common Era, is known for its terracotta sculptures, the oldest figurative sculpture in Africa. The researchers wanted to understand whether the Nok people domesticated animals or were hunters. However, in the acidic soil conditions typical of the Nok region, animal bones do not survive. So the scientists turned to the analysis of molecular food residues in the pottery. Plant and animal products leave stable chemical compounds, especially lipids, in the pores of clay vessels. Using gas chromatography, these compounds can be detected after thousands of years. The study revealed not only the remains of wild animals, but also components indicating the presence of honeybees. About a third of the examined pottery shards contained high molecular lipids typical of beeswax. This is the first direct evidence of honey use in Africa. It is not yet possible to determine exactly how honey was used. It is possible that the Nok people separated honey from wax by heating. They may also have used honey for cooking, making mead, or for technical and medicinal purposes. It is possible that the clay vessels served as beehives, as is still practiced by some African peoples. Famous Catman Key Marco. In front of the Marco Island Historical Museum in Florida stands a tall statue of a cat-like creature, a copy of a unique artifact that was found in 1896. The Smithsonian expedition was excavating a pond known as the Pile Dweller's Yard and discovered a wooden figurine under a layer of mud, a 15-centimeter tall figure of a catman, which they named Key Marco the cat. It is believed that it was carved by the indigenous people of the island, the Calusa. The anthropomorphic features and resemblance to the Florida cougar allowed researchers to conclude that the figurine was created before the arrival of Europeans. Today, the Key Marco cat is on display at the Marco Island Historical Museum. This artifact is one of the most famous finds in Florida and is located there on a long-term loan from the Smithsonian Institution. The statue of the Catman has become a symbol of Marco Island. It is featured on street signs, souvenirs, jewelry, and even in the designs of local businesses. Austin Bell, the museum's curator of collections, wrote a book, The 9 Lives of Key Marco, a famous cat detailing the story of the find and its long journey through various museums. Testing psychotropic substances. Recent excavations at a former SS facility in Austria have shed light on one of the dark and little-known pages of Nazi experiments. Archaeologists have discovered the remains of laboratories where experiments with psychotropic substances were conducted. The facility, located in a mountainous area, was carefully hidden from people, which allowed it to remain unnoticed until now. The laboratories were equipped with the latest technology of the time, and the artifacts found give an idea of the scale of the research that was conducted there. Ampules with chemical residues, complex distillation and synthesis apparatus, and journals with notes detailing the experiments are among the finds. According to the records, the research concerned the effects of psychotropic drugs on human consciousness and behavior. The Nazis were actively looking for ways to control the mind, trying to develop substances that could be used to suppress the will or change the perception of reality in opponents. The effects of drugs on soldiers were also studied, with the aim of enhancing their fighting qualities or dulling their fear of death. Records found in the laboratories contain shocking details about how the Nazis conducted experiments on concentration camp prisoners using them as test subjects. These experiments were cruel and often resulted in severe physical and mental consequences for the victims. Some substances caused severe hallucinations, paranoia, and loss of control over their own bodies, while others completely blocked the feeling of fear or pain, turning people into fighting machines. These experiments may have been part of a larger SS program to create ideal soldiers, impervious to pain and moral limitations. Many modern synthetic drugs were created in these laboratories. The youngest archaeologist. During a routine family outing in Tel Azekah, Israel, 3-year-old Ziv Nitzan accidentally made an archaeological discovery. She found an ancient scarab, some 3,800 years old. This place is known as the site of the biblical battle between David and Goliath, and the find immediately attracted the attention of the Israel Antiquities Authority, which confirmed the authenticity and uniqueness of the artifact. It turned out that this was not just a pebble, but an ancient seal in the form of a scarab, a symbol of renewal and rebirth in Egyptian culture, which the Canaanites used as an amulet or seal. According to researchers, the scarab is associated with the Canaanite civilization, a people who inhabited the lands of the Levant in the Bronze Age. Such objects reflected the belief, status, and close cultural ties of Canaan with Egypt. 100 years underground. In the Czech Republic, archaeologists have discovered an unusual treasure trove that turned out to be not ancient but very recent. It is only about 100 years old. In one of the villages, a gold hoard was found hidden at the beginning of the 20th century. Among the coins and jewelry are items that clearly do not date back to the Middle Ages, but to a later time. The treasure was found in an old building that once belonged to a family engaged in trade. When the First World War began, their business collapsed, and the money was apparently hidden to wait out hard times. But they never returned, leaving their treasure in an inaccessible place. Part of the gold was apparently collected from several sources: coins from different countries, jewelry, rare metals. This treasure is interesting not only because of its value, but also because of the history behind it. It reminds us how people try to save their money when the world around them is collapsing. Many of these items are now on display in museums, and the treasure has become a symbol of lost hopes and destinies. The oldest shopping list. When going to the store, many of us make a list of the necessary products on a piece of paper or in the notepad of our smartphone, but it was not always so. During excavations in southern Turkey, archaeologists discovered a unique clay tablet with Akkadian cuneiform, which turned out to be the oldest known shopping list. This document, created 3,500 years ago, gives us an idea of the daily life of the inhabitants of that time. The tablet was found in the ruins of the ancient city of Alalak, which attracted the attention of scientists in the first half of the 20th century, but due to the war, excavations were suspended and resumed only in the 2000s. Recently, after the earthquake of 2023, another clay tablet was discovered during restoration work in Alalak. It is 4.2 by 3.5 centimeters in size and 1.6 centimeters thick. Deciphering the inscriptions revealed that it was a shopping list, including wooden tables, chairs, and stools. The document also mentions the names of the buyer and sellers, making it an important source for understanding trade and everyday relations in the 15th century BC. According to Turkish archaeologists, this is the oldest shopping list that has survived to this day, and it is of great value for the study of the history of the ancient Near East. Tomb of an unknown pharaoh. In Egypt, near the city of Abydos, archaeologists have found the tomb of a pharaoh that is about 3,600 years old. It is located at a depth of 7 meters in an ancient necropolis known as Mount Anubis. The tomb turned out to be almost empty. It was most likely plundered in ancient times. The name of the pharaoh was written on the plaster at the entrance but has not survived to this day. Scientists suggest that this could be one of the little-known rulers, for example, Sennaib or Pantjani, who are mentioned in other sources, but their burials have not yet been found. The tomb dates back to the Second Intermediate Period, a difficult time in the history of Egypt, when the country was divided into several kingdoms and was in political chaos. One of these regional kingdoms was the Abydos dynasty, whose representatives could have been buried in this area. Interestingly, the new tomb is built into the complex of an earlier and more influential pharaoh, Neferhotep I, and is architecturally similar to both the tombs of the Middle Kingdom and later ones. Giant Viking burial. Archaeologists have made a unique discovery in the village of Asum, east of Odense, Denmark. They have found more than 50 perfectly preserved Viking skeletons, which is rare for such burials. In addition to the skeletons, 5 cremation burials were found, which further increases the value of the find. According to archaeologist Michael Borre-Lundo, such finds open up new possibilities for studying the health, nutrition, and origins of people of that time. It may be possible to find out whether they were related. The burial site, which covers an area of about 2,000 square meters, dates back to the 9th, the 10th centuries, the period of the reign of Gorm and Thera. It is one of the largest Viking burials found on the island of Funen. Some of the graves indicate a high status of the deceased. For example, the burial of a noble woman buried in a wagon with items such as a glass bead necklace, a key, and a knife with silver trim. At her feet was a wooden chest, the contents of which remain a mystery. Also found in the burials were a bronze brooch and a piece of rock crystal, probably brought from Norway. These finds confirm that the Vikings had extensive trade connections. Secret Project Bell. According to various sources, this was a top-secret program aimed at creating technology ahead of its time. The bell was a bell-shaped device consisting of a metal shell filled with a strange substance called red mercury. Tests were conducted in a remote laboratory in Poland near Wrocław. The research surrounding this project covered a wide range of topics, from anti-gravity to time travel. Some theories claim that the Nazis were trying to create a device that could change the outcome of the war by using advanced physical phenomena such as the distortion of space and time. However, the results of the experiments remain unknown, and after the war, traces of the bell disappeared. The secrecy surrounding the project gave rise to many rumors. Some believe that the device was evacuated to South America or fell into the hands of the Allies. Whether the bell actually existed remains an open question. Hjortspring Rook. The boat was found in the Hjortspring Bog in Denmark and is the oldest planked ship in Northern Europe, dating back approximately 2,300 years. The boat is almost 20 meters long, weighs 530 kilograms, and could carry 24 people with weapons and equipment. The boat's planks were made of basswood, the oars were made of maple, and there were curved extensions at each end. This boat is an outstanding example of ancient shipbuilding, showing the high level of craftsmanship and engineering knowledge of the time. Linden was chosen for its lightness and strength, which made the boat fast and maneuverable, and maple for the oars, for its hardness and stability. The Great Bell of Dammazedi. The Great Bell of Dammazedi is considered the largest bell ever made. It was cast in 1484 by order of the King of Myanmar Dammazedi and installed on the famous Shwedagon Pagoda in Yangon, one of the most sacred places for Buddhists in the country. According to historical data, the weight of the bell exceeded 290 tons, which makes it a record holder among similar structures. However, the fate of the bell was tragic. In 1608, the Portuguese mercenary and adventurer Felipe de Brito captured Yangon and decided to take the bell to melt it down for weapons. While transporting it across the Bogo River, he miscalculated the weight of the structure. The bell capsized the barge and sank to the bottom. Since then, it has not been possible to find it despite numerous attempts. Today, the Great Bell of Dammazedi remains part of the legends and national pride of Myanmar. Its story is a reminder of how culture, spirituality, and greed can be intertwined in one artifact, the fate of which remains a mystery to this day. Life of the Ancient Egyptians. In the daily life of the ancient Egyptians, breakfast did not have the same extensive menu as modern meals. Simple but nutritious foods formed the basis: emmer bread, a little honey or figs for sweetness, and perhaps a small amount of goat's milk cheese. This meal emphasized practicality and the need to maintain energy for the day ahead. It is important to note that the breakfast for the pharaoh and his family could have been more varied and rich, including meat products and fruits, emphasizing their status and difference from ordinary citizens. During the feast, the Egyptians displayed wooden mummies for everyone to see. This custom served as a reminder of the brevity of life and the importance of enjoying the moment. This tradition may have been inspired by a belief in an afterlife and a desire to remind guests of the inevitability of death, which made every moment of earthly life even more precious. The very presence of a mummy at feasts may also have had ritual significance, linking the living with the world of the dead and ensuring the favor of the gods. Shoes in ancient Egypt were not only a practical item but also an expression of social status and even a means of symbolic communication. Sandals of the upper classes could be made of expensive materials and decorated with complex patterns which emphasized their high position. The images of enemies on the soles of the sandals symbolized their defeat and submission, serving as a reminder of the power and might of their owner. The ancient Egyptians were extremely attached to their pets, which is reflected in the art and literature of the time. Cats, dogs, and even more exotic animals such as lions and monkeys were often depicted alongside their owners, demonstrating the deep emotional bonds that form between man and animal. These animals not only served as companions but also performed important functions in households and religious ceremonies. Cats in Egypt were especially revered, associated with the goddess Bastet, a symbol of protection and fertility. These animals were considered guardians of the house from evil spirits and pests. Dogs, associated with Anubis, the god of funeral rites, also occupied an important place in the life of the Egyptians. They not only served as faithful companions and assistants in the hunt, but also symbolized eternal loyalty and protection. Fashion in ancient Egypt reflected not only social status, but also religious beliefs. Clothes made of fine linen, which made it possible to withstand the hot climate, were complemented by bright jewelry, which not only served as decoration, but also as amulets. Attention to detail in clothing, jewelry, and makeup indicates a highly developed sense of aesthetics and a belief in the protective magic of these objects. Makeup, especially the famous black coal, was used not only to highlight the eyes, but also as protection from sunlight and evil spirits. Beer was not just a popular drink in ancient Egypt, it played a central role in the economy and social life. Being affordable and nutritious, beer served as the main drink for all segments of the population and was even used as a means of payment. Beer production was a carefully regulated process controlled by the state, highlighting its importance not only as a commodity, but also as an important element in religious and social rituals. Children's hairstyles in ancient Egypt were not only aesthetic, but also symbolic. The strand of youth left on children's heads was not just a fashionable adornment. It symbolized their age and social status and also protected them from evil spirits and diseases. This strand was cut during the ceremony of transition into adulthood, highlighting the change in their social status. Funerary portraits, which appeared in Egypt during the period of Greco-Roman influence, represent a unique combination of Egyptian religious traditions and Greco-Roman artistic techniques. These portraits, depicting the dead with extraordinary realism, were intended to preserve their appearance for the afterlife, serving as a bridge between the worlds of the living and the dead. Signals from another planet. The James Webb Telescope has detected signs of substances in the atmosphere of the exoplanet K218b that are produced only by living organisms on Earth. This is primarily dimethyl sulfide, which is emitted into the air by seaweed and microorganisms. The planet is located 124 light-years away from us in the habitable zone. It has an atmosphere with methane and carbon dioxide, which means that water clouds and liquid water are possible there. All this makes K218b the first truly confirmed candidate for a potentially habitable planet outside the solar system. Scientists claim that this is not yet a discovery of life, but only a strong chemical trace that may indicate it. The next step is additional observations to confirm or disprove the hypothesis. But the fact itself is a breakthrough, because for the first time we have received a signal that really resembles biology, and it came from the depths of space. Not from science fiction, not from assumptions, but from the specific atmosphere that we see in real time. Artificial intelligence finds new geoglyphs. Archaeologists have used artificial intelligence, AI, to discover 303 new geoglyphs near the Nazca lines in Peru, depicting parrots, cats, monkeys, killer whales, and even decapitated heads. The figures nearly double the number of known drawings at the enigmatic 2,000-year-old archaeological site. A team from Yamagata University in Japan, in collaboration with IBM Research, has found previously unknown geoglyphs that are significantly smaller in size than the giant geometric patterns created between 200 and 700 AD. Dating back to 200 BC, the figures provide new evidence of the transition from the Paracas to the Nazca culture, which later created such famous designs as the hummingbird, monkey, and whale. According to archaeologist Masato Sakai, the use of AI has made it possible to speed up and improve the process of mapping the geoglyphs. Using this approach, the team was able to find 303 new drawings in just 6 months, which is significantly faster than the previous almost a century, when 430 geoglyphs were discovered. The AI helped to recognize small relief geoglyphs that are difficult to notice with the naked eye, as well as analyze huge amounts of data collected by drones to identify potential locations for new finds. Drones and artificial intelligence have become a quantum leap in the study of geoglyphs. Some of the new drawings are only 7 meters in size, so they remained undetected by traditional research methods. A salt block instead of money. An ancient mural found at Calakmul, a UNESCO World Heritage Site on Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, depicts the first documented instance of salt trading among the Maya more than 2,500 years ago. Depicting daily life, the mural shows a salt vendor showing a customer a salt block wrapped in leaves, while another person holds a large spoon over a basket, presumably containing loose salt. It is the earliest known depiction of salt being sold in a marketplace in the Maya region. Salt, an essential biological element and a means of preserving food, was a valuable commodity among the Maya because of its limited availability. Salt blocks could be easily transported by canoe along the coast and up rivers in southern Belize. Louisiana State University, LSU archaeologist Heather McKillop discovered the first remains of ancient salt kitchens in 2004, submerged and preserved in a salty mangrove lagoon in Belize. Since then, she and her team have examined 70 sites that comprise a network of buildings and rooms known as the Paynes Creek Saltworks. McKillop's team found 4,042 wooden posts, a canoe, a paddle, a high-quality jadeite tool, stone tools for salting fish and meat, and hundreds of ceramic vessels. By examining the ceramic vessels used to evaporate the brine, the researchers found that they were standardized in volume, indicating the production of uniformly sized salt units possibly used as a medium of exchange similar to money. The results shocked scientists. The story of the mummy, which had been kept in Warsaw University for many years and was shrouded in mystery, has finally found a logical explanation. Previously, it was believed that this was a man, a priest named Hord Jehuti, who lived in the 1st century BC. However, in 2015, Polish researchers decided to conduct a CT scan and discovered that it was a woman. Moreover, scientists thought that she was pregnant at the time of her death. The images allegedly showed fetal bones, a small arm, a leg. This aroused great interest in the scientific world. After all, this could be the first pregnant mummy ever discovered. Moreover, deformations were noticed on the skull of the mysterious lady, and researchers suggested that the cause of death could be aggressive cancer. However, over time, doubts began to appear. Radiologist Sahar Salim from Cairo immediately noticed that there was no anatomical evidence of the fetus and asked a logical question. Why did the bones disappear but the soft tissues of the child were preserved? Recently, archaeologist Kamila Brolinska and her colleagues returned to the case and reanalyzed more than 1,400 CT images. 4 independent groups worked, and all came to the same conclusion: there was no pregnancy. The so-called fetus turned out to be tissue clots left behind due to irregularities in the mummification process. The same applies to the alleged cancer. The skull was damaged during brain extraction, which is not uncommon with careless embalming. So the mysterious lady remains a mystery once again, but this time without sensational headlines. This story shows how important it is to double-check even the most sensational scientific discoveries. Connection to ancient Egyptian priests. Among the many occult theories that interested the Nazis, the idea of ancient Egyptian priests occupied a special place. The leaders of the Third Reich, especially members of the Anatomical, believed that ancient Egyptian priests possessed secret knowledge about the afterlife, magic, and power over death. This knowledge, in their opinion, could be used to achieve control over spiritual and physical forces, which would make the Nazis invincible. Nazi expeditions to Egypt, organized under the auspices of the Anatomical, were aimed at finding ancient artifacts associated with the pharaohs and their rituals. Of particular interest was the cult of Osiris, the god of the afterlife and rebirth, symbolizing eternal life and strength. Osiris, as the patron of resurrection and the cycles of life, could, according to the Nazis, give them the key to immortality and control over the soul. The expeditions were supposed to find ancient texts and artifacts that could reveal the secrets of the priestly rites performed in the temples and pyramids. The Nazis were looking for magical objects such as wands, amulets, and sacred scrolls that could give them access to spiritual power using the magical rites of the ancient priests. Although no official evidence of successful finds or magical artifacts was ever presented, the Nazi elite believed that the ancient Egyptian priests possessed true knowledge about the nature of life and death. Not a biblical miracle. The famous biblical miracle of Moses allegedly parting the Red Sea to get the Israelites through was long considered a supernatural intervention. However, modern scientists offer a much more earthly explanation, and it is no less impressive. A new study has shown that about 3,500 years ago, weather and geographic conditions could well have created the effect described in the Old Testament. Scientists from the U.S. National Center for Atmospheric Research have used a computer model to prove that with a wind speed of about 100 kilometers per h blowing in the right direction, the water could have temporarily retreated, revealing land up to 5 kilometers wide, and then just as abruptly returned as a tsunami wave. The biblical description says that the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all the night. The researchers are sure that the wind is the key to the mystery. The crossing point is now more often considered to be not the deep Gulf of Aqaba, but the shallower and smoother Gulf of Suez, where such a phenomenon would be possible. It is also there that Napoleon is known to have led his army through shallow waters during low tide in 1789, but almost drowned on the way back. There are other hypotheses. For example, the crossing could have been not through the Red Sea, but through Lake Tanis, the so-called Reed Sea mentioned in the original Hebrew. Or the water could have retreated due to an earthquake and tsunami, as happens in modern disasters when a wave pulls water far from the shore. One way or another, the solution to the ancient miracle may not be in violating the laws of nature, but in the ability to accurately calculate the time, place, and believe. The paradise that never was. There is a popular belief that before agriculture, people lived in some kind of golden age. They say that hunter-gatherers ate lightly, worked 2 hours a day, rested the rest of the time, and lived in harmony with nature. Sounds good, but archaeology disagrees. Firstly, the average life expectancy in those days was about 30 to 35 years. The causes of death were illness, injury, and hunger. The skeletons of primitive people often show signs of malnutrition, deformations from constant physical exertion, broken bones, and signs of infection. Secondly, getting food took much more time than is commonly believed. It was a constant risk. Hunting could end in nothing, and gathering depended on the season. People did not walk. They looked for something to eat and tried to survive. Yes, they did not have taxes, wars in the modern sense, or an alarm clock in the morning. But this does not mean that it was paradise. It was a struggle, daily with no guarantee for tomorrow. And it was agriculture, with all its drawbacks that gave birth to civilization. People began to live longer. Surpluses appeared. Cities, writing, knowledge appeared. Not immediately, not everywhere, but the direction was set. So the primitive paradise is more of a pretty picture, and real history is more complex, tougher, and more interesting. Pyramid on the site of a volcano. The Great Pyramid at the Mayan site of San Andres was built in response to the eruption of the Tierra Blanca Joven volcano in the Lago Ilopango caldera. San Andres, located in the Zapotecan Valley in the department of La Libertad, El Salvador, was founded around 900 BC as an agricultural center that became the capital of the Mayan state between 600 and 900 AD. The eruption of Tierra Blanca Joven, which occurred around 539 AD, was one of the largest volcanic events in history, ejecting about 43.7 cubic kilometers of volcanic material. It caused significant climate change and devastated an area with a radius of up to 100 kilometers. Dr. Akira Ichikawa of the University of Colorado Boulder noted that due to the scale of the disaster, many settlements were abandoned and it took a long time to rebuild them. However, research in San Andres, just 40 kilometers from Lago Ilopango, has shown that construction began several years after the eruption. The start of construction of the La Campana Pyramid dates back to just 30 years after the eruption, and its completion took about 80 years. The pyramid, 7 meters high and with a volume of 23,000 cubic meters, was the largest structure in the valley. Dr. Ichikawa suggests that the pyramid was built using volcanic ash as a material and had religious significance associated with the worship of volcanoes in order to protect against future eruptions. Unknown Mozart piece. A piece by the famous composer Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, which had been kept in the collections of Leipzig libraries for over a century, was recently discovered during work on a new edition of the Köchel Catalog. The catalog is a reference book on Mozart's work and is compiled by the International Mozarteum Foundation in Salzburg. The discovered serenade, entitled Serenade XC, is 12 minutes long and was probably written in the mid to late 1760s when Mozart was between the ages of 10 and 13. Ulrich Lasinger, head of research at the foundation, noted that the style of the piece indicates an early stage of the composer's work, adding that he would not have written such music at the age of 17. While it is impossible to prove the authorship 100%, Lasinger said that similarities to other works by Mozart of that time and the presence of his name on the notes point to its authenticity. The discovered composition was first presented at the International Mozarteum Foundation in Salzburg and performed at the Leipzig Opera. People collected bones. In Siberia, not far from one of the ancient settlements, archaeologists have been finding accumulations of mammoth bones for decades. At first, it was believed that these were natural cemeteries. Supposedly, the animals died near bodies of water, and their remains accumulated in one place over time. But when scientists began to carefully study how the bones were arranged, everything changed. The bones were not lying chaotically. They were collected, rearranged, compacted in layers. Some were clearly set on fire. Many had traces of tools, cuts, and splits. All this indicated one thing: this was not a natural death. This was a trace of human work. A new version has appeared. People of the late Paleolithic did not just hunt. They collected mammoth bones in one place, as if creating reserves, something like a prehistoric warehouse. Such bones were used for fuel. It does not burn well, but better than nothing. From the large ones, they made buildings, dwellings. Small ones were used for tools or perhaps for exchange. This changes the picture. We are used to thinking of them as nomads, constantly on the move. But here is a strategy, a resource calculation. Not just a random catch, but a system in which even the death of an animal was converted into building material. All this is not an isolated incident, but part of a chain. Similar deposits have been found in other places. Perhaps we simply did not notice for too long that before us is not the chaos of nature, but the economy of ancient man. How they wrote before the Romans. In the Spanish province of Leon, archaeologists have made a discovery that could change our understanding of early writing on the Iberian Peninsula. In the ancient settlement of La Peña del Castro, a spindle whorl was discovered, a small object used in weaving with an engraved inscription in the Celtiberian alphabet. The age of the artifact is about the 1st century BC. This is one of the northernmost and earliest finds of its kind. Before the arrival of the Romans, writing was practically not used in these parts, so the inscription became a real sensation. Scientists suggest that the text could have been a sign of ownership or had a symbolic meaning, for example, to show the status of the owner. Interestingly, the spindle whorl is made of local talc, which means it was made on site. It was found in a storeroom where there were also baskets of seeds, tools, and even the remains of dried meat. All this indicates a fairly developed way of life and and economy. This find is important evidence that local cultures were much more complex than previously thought and had already begun to master writing. Pyramids of Giza. The greatness of ancient Egyptian civilization is most clearly demonstrated in the Pyramids of Giza, standing on the Giza Plateau as eternal guardians of time. Built over 4,500 years ago, these monumental structures remain one of mankind's most significant achievements, demonstrating not only architectural mastery but also the ancient Egyptians' advanced knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. In 2013, archaeologists discovered papyrus fragments that shed light on the mechanisms by which limestone blocks were transported along the Nile. These documents, written by the chief of the pyramid's builders, recount the complex logistical operation of transporting the stones from the Tura quarries to the Giza Plateau. The use of waterways and specially designed canals demonstrates a high level of engineering and planning. The Pyramid of Cheops, also known as the Great Pyramid, is striking in its astronomical accuracy. The orientation of the pyramid almost perfectly coincides with the four cardinal directions, which indicates the deep knowledge of the ancient Egyptians in the field of astronomy. This achievement required not only accurate astronomical observations, but also the development of mathematical and geometric calculation methods. One of the most fascinating mysteries of ancient Egypt is the mystery of the disappearance of the pyramid's shine. The pyramids of Giza were originally lined with sparkling white limestone which reflected sunlight, making them visible for tens of kilometers around. This brilliant appearance not only emphasized the greatness and power of the pharaohs, but also symbolized their divine origin. Over time, most of the casing stones were looted or destroyed, which led to the loss of the original appearance of the pyramids. For nearly 4 millennia, the Great Pyramid remained the tallest man-made structure on Earth until it was surpassed by Lincoln Cathedral in England in the 14th century. This fact emphasizes the exceptional achievements of ancient Egyptian civilization in the field of architecture and construction. The construction of the pyramids involved the use of millions of stone blocks, each of which weighed from 2.5 to 15 tons. The ancient Egyptians developed and used sophisticated techniques and tools to quarry these blocks, process them, and place them precisely. Nubia, located south of Egypt, played a significant role in the history and culture of ancient Egyptian civilization. This region, rich in gold and other valuable resources, influenced the development of Egyptian art, architecture, and religion. The Nubian pyramids, although smaller in size compared to their Egyptian counterparts, demonstrate unique architectural skill and evidence the close cultural ties between the two regions. It is important to note that over 200 pyramids were built in Nubia, making the region one of the largest concentrations of pyramids in the world. Bronze artifacts in Turkey. At the ruins of the ancient castle of Cyians, located in what is now Turkey, archaeologists have discovered bronze shields and a helmet that are about 2,700 years old. The artifacts, found under 20 meters of rubble, were created during the Urartian kingdom and were likely used for ceremonial purposes to honor the god Kaldi, a protector in war. Cyians Castle was built as a fortress and royal residence during the reign of King Rusa II in the 7th century BC. However, it only stood for 25 years before it was destroyed by an earthquake. The newly discovered bronze shields and helmet were found in the ceremonial hall of the castle. Decorations on the helmet and intricate patterns on the shields confirmed that they were used in religious ceremonies. Other bronze objects have been found at the site previously, many of which are dedicated to Haldi, the main god of the Urartians, who was believed to protect them during warfare. Despite minor damage, the artifacts are well preserved, and restoration will help to restore them to their full form. Cyians Castle remains the richest source of Urartian bronze artifacts in Turkey, and each find provides more information about the culture of this ancient kingdom. Hobbit remains. Thorin, as archaeologists have nicknamed him, lived about 50,000 years ago at a time when the last Neanderthals were disappearing from the face of the earth. His remains were found in a cave in the south of France, where he probably hid from the bitter cold. In 2015, archaeologists discovered a well-preserved fossilized jaw with 31 teeth and finger bones. Interestingly, Thorin's teeth, despite being worn down from active chewing, were in good condition. Analysis showed that he was an adult male, probably quite young, since Neanderthals lived on average about 20 years. The most striking thing was the genetic study. Thorin's DNA was very different from all known Neanderthal samples. This indicates an isolated population that separated from the rest of the Neanderthals about 105,000 years ago. It is curious that just 10 days' walk from this cave there lived another community of Neanderthals, but judging by the analysis, they did not communicate. Researchers speculate on how Neanderthals perceived the world and why they were so isolated. Uncommunication was their characteristic feature. At the time of their existence, there were about 10,000 Neanderthals in the world, and over hundreds of thousands of years they became unsociable. They had a high inbreeding rate, which is confirmed by many congenital anomalies. Finding one of the last Neanderthals is a huge success. Isotopes in the bones confirm that Thorne lived in the harsh climate of the Ice Age. Scientists are still arguing about why the Neanderthals disappeared because of the harsh climate or competition with the Cro-Magnons. Anthropologists believe that climate was not a decisive factor because the Ice Ages began long before their disappearance. Probably the more developed Cro-Magnons displaced them. Cro-Magnons were not against interbreeding, and the genome of modern humans contains an admixture of Neanderthals, while no traces of sapiens have been found in Neanderthals. Interestingly, a fragment of bone with a scratched picture, possibly depicting a mammoth, was recently found in the Bryansk region in Russia. This is a rare example that indicates the presence of fine art among Neanderthals, while Cro-Magnons left many works. Giant Jade Dragon. Chinese archaeologists have discovered the largest jade dragon from the Neolithic Hongshan culture. The artifact was found in the Yuan Baoshan rock tomb located in Aohan Province, Inner Mongolia. The jade dragon measures 15.8 centimeters in length, 9.5 centimeters in width, and 3 centimeters in thickness, and is a unique find, which has no analogs in the region. The excavations also revealed architectural remains, fragments of human bones, tombs, hearths, and various artifacts, including jade and painted ceramics. Among them were tripod bowls and basins. Carbon-14 dating showed that the object belongs to the late Hongshan culture and was created more than 5,000 years ago. The search for Antarctic Base 211. The legend of Base 211 inches in Antarctica is one of the most mysterious theories associated with the Nazis. According to rumors, the Nazis may have built a secret base in this isolated region during World War II to hide after their defeat. The base was allegedly located in the Queen Maud Land region and was equipped with advanced technology that allowed the Nazis to survive in the harsh conditions of Antarctica. Recent studies and expeditions have generated a new wave of interest in this theory. In recent years, several artifacts have been found, including fragments of equipment and items with characteristic German markings, which may have belonged to German expeditions to Antarctica. Some researchers claim that this is evidence of Nazi presence in the region, although most scientists do not believe this. There is also evidence of German attempts to establish bases in Antarctica during the 1938 expedition, but no evidence has been found of the existence of Base 211. Despite the lack of direct evidence, myths about a secret base continue to excite researchers and conspiracy theorists. Mini Stonehenge. In the English county of Derbyshire, near the town of Matlock, archaeologists have discovered an ancient ceremonial complex from the Bronze Age, about 3,700 years old. This place turned out to be part of a large stone circle which had been hidden in the forest for a long time, and it all started with the curiosity of 24-year-old student George Bird, who became interested in a lonely stone standing in the forest near his home. The stone, known as the Farley Moor Standing Stone, is about 2 meters high and was previously considered a solitary monument. But on Bird's initiative, the researchers decided to carefully study the surrounding area. It turned out that the stone stands on top of a natural spring, the water from which flows into the Bentley Brook and further into the Derwent River. Traces of an ancient platform were found nearby, which was probably used for rituals long before the stone itself was installed. This suggests that the place was revered for centuries and was of great importance to Bronze Age communities, especially in connection with water. Archaeologists also found 5 more stones that had previously stood upright. Together they formed an oval circle about 25 meters wide. The discovery joins the list of 25 known Bronze Age stone circles found in the Peak District, a region rich in ancient monuments, and confirms that ritual life at the time was much broader than the famous Stonehenge. The Sphinx was not built by people. A recent discovery by a team of scientists from New York University radically changes our perception of the history of the Great Sphinx of Giza. Contrary to the generally accepted belief that the monument was carved by the ancient Egyptians, a new theory argues that the Sphinx is the result of natural forces. Researchers paid attention to yardangs, natural sculptures formed by erosion in desert conditions, reminiscent of animals or people in their contours. Such formations are typical for archaeological zones with a similar climate, including the territory of Egypt. In experiments simulating erosion in the laboratory, scientists have proven that when exposed to wind and water, soft rock can form figures remarkably reminiscent of a sphinx. So perhaps the ancient Egyptians just polished and complemented the already existing natural form, giving it clearer features. This study opens a new page in understanding the processes of formation of archaeological sites and the role of nature in the art of antiquity. Who paid for the revolution? 1917. The Russian Empire collapses. Power passes to the Bolsheviks. Lenin, Trotsky, new slogans, new orders. Everything seems spontaneous. The will of the people, the uprising of the masses. But one question still remains without a clear answer. Who paid for it? It is officially believed that the Bolsheviks were financed through party fees, donations, and help from sympathizers. But this does not explain the volumes. Publishing newspapers, renting buildings, weapons, logistics, transporting leaders, security. All this requires money. Big money. Where did it come from? There is a version about funding from Germany. They say that the Kaiser's general staff wanted to destabilize Russia and thereby withdraw it from the war. Lenin was allegedly given money. A sealed carriage from Switzerland was organized and security was provided. This version is confirmed by many indirect sources, but there are no direct documents, or they were destroyed. Another theory talks about the West. Wall Street bankers, the English, the Old Believers. They say that the revolution was beneficial to those who wanted to bring down the old order and invest in a new one, controlled chaos. There are even names: Jacob Schiff, Olaf Aschberg, Morgenthau. But again, there is little evidence. Everything falls apart into hints and coincidences. The strangest thing is, 100 years later, we cannot say for sure how one of the largest political transformations of the century was financed. We know who walked the streets, who seized the palaces, but we do not know who printed leaflets and paid for the trains. Maybe the revolution is not only a struggle of ideas, but also invisible money, and those who know how to bet on the future. I don't know which of these secrets is the most important, but I do know one thing. Real history is not the one in textbooks. It bursts out from scraps, from random finds, from strange coincidences, and maybe we won't find all the answers. But if we at least start asking the right questions, that will change something. Thanks for watching. Bye, everyone.